Hiyuki, Lady Miko of Ashinahara, has finally arrived on the debut banner for Wuwa's anniversary, equipped with a blossoming blade, an incredibly fluid playstyle, and of course, an insane amount of glacio damage. She's got a kit with plenty of complex mechanics, but in practice, a relatively simple playstyle that varies in complexity depending on how you want to use her on the battlefield. As a glacio, liberation, and negative status focused DPS, she'll synergize best with units that buff resonance liberation damage like Lynae, or increase the damage of negative statuses like Chisa. With that, welcome to our full-scope, comprehensive guide to Hiyuki, the newest addition to Wuthering Waves, and I'm here to break down everything when it comes to how she works, what her best equipment will be, and the steps you need to take across her team building and rotations to make the most out of her insane damage potential. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Hiyuki, with her baseline kit, focuses on the buildup and expenditure of several unique resources across her two unique forms to deliver insane Yai combos, cinematic attacks, and of course, cut her enemies into a million pieces with her insane second liberation. Naturally, her first resource, Dedication, in her baseline form is where we'll begin. Dedication has a max cap of 300 and is built up through a variety of ways. The first is with her basic attacks. This is a simple 3-hit attack chain that restores 100 points of dedication and applies 1 stack of Glacio Chafe. Hiyuki has several ways to advance to this third hit. The first is by performing her dodge counter. Attacking afterwards will trigger the third hit of her basic. The second is by casting her baseline resonance skill. This deals a small amount of damage and enhances her next third basic to restore 100 additional points of dedication and makes her next basic following the cast her third hit. The third way is by using her intro skill, which restores 200 points of dedication on use, applies 1 stack of Glacio Chafe, and makes her next basic the third hit of her attack chain. When dedication is full, Hiyuki gains access to her heavy attack, Frost Splinter. This consumes all 300 points to shoot out 3 arrows, with the final shot applying 1 stack of Glacio Chafe. This ability also then unlocks Hiyuki's first liberation, for claiming Inward Vision. When used, this ability deals a burst of Glacio damage, applies 4 stacks of Glacio Chafe, and grants Hiyuki 2 resources, 3 stacks of Frost Hardened Yai and 50 Frost Heart. We'll talk about those later. It also activates Hiyuki's second state, Foreclaim Self. In Foreclaim Self, Hiyuki drastically alters her moveset and restores Frost Heart when using attacks. Her basic attack becomes a 5-hit attack chain with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th hits applying 1 stack of Glacio Chafe. Her baseline heavy attack is held to ready a parry stance, and when released, she stabs forward dealing liberation damage and can follow up with the second hit of her attack chain. If an enemy attacks her during the held stage, she blocks all incoming damage, stagnates nearby targets, and becomes immune to interruption for a short time afterwards. A parry can also be followed up with the 4th hit of her attack chain. Her mid-air attack becomes a 3-hit attack chain that applies Glacio Chafe on the 2nd and 3rd hits, and the combo will not be interrupted until she hits the ground. Her dodge counter deals liberation damage and can be followed up with the 3rd hit of her attack chain. Her resonance skill then gains 2 casts, the first pulling in nearby targets and removing their frozen state, while the second, when used in midair, has an identical effect. When Hiyuki has more than 100 points of Frost Heart, using a dodge after any of her normal attacks or holding her skill after using her resonance skill will cause her to enter the Yai stance for up to 3 attacks, with each basic attack consuming 100 Frost Heart, 1 Frost Heart on Yai, and generating a stack of Whiteout Bitter Frost and applying 3 stacks of Glacio Chafe if a Frost Heart on Yai is consumed. Hiyuki gains 3 stacks of Frost Heart on Yai when using her first liberation. When Hiyuki successfully generates 3 Whiteout Bitter Frost, she gains access to a unique heavy attack, Bitter Frost. This deals a massive burst of liberation damage, consumes all Whiteout Bitter Frost, applies 1 stack of Glacio Chafe, and also generates 1 point of Snowforge Blade. That Snowforge Blade stack, which has a cap of 3, is then used to heavily buff the second cast of her liberation, which can be cast in a few ways. Simply pressing her liberation automatically casts the ability and consumes 3 points of Snowforge Blade if available. Otherwise, it consumes none. She can also hold down her liberation button to enter a charging state, which consumes 1 point of Snowforge Blade periodically. Releasing the button casts the ability. This attack deals a massive burst of liberation damage and gains additional damage multipliers for each Snowforge Blade consumed. It also consumes all of her remaining dedication, Frost Heart, and ends her Foreclaim Self state. That's not all when it comes to Hiyuki's kit. She also has a unique interaction with Glacio Chafe. When she's on the team, this negative status is converted to Glacio Bite, and each new stack deals an instance of damage based on their current stack limit. The higher the stacks, the more damage inflicted. Glacio Bite damage is also considered the same as Glacio Chafe. When her first ultimate or Yai attack hits an enemy with 10 or more stacks, she'll then consume all stacks at once to trigger Frostbind, a frozen state. This makes Chisa, who can increase the stack limit of negative statuses by 3, a great pick to improve Hiyuki's overall damage. When you factor in all of Hiyuki's abilities, resources, and interactions with each other, she seems like she has an overwhelming number of resources to keep track of, but in practice her kit flows from one resource to another seamlessly. She has a simple playstyle that focuses on intro scaling in, performing her third basic to maximize her dedication, then using her bow heavy attack followed by the first cast of her liberation. From there, she'll cast her resonance skills, then follow up with a full basic attack chain before entering Yai stance with a dodge, triggering all 3 of her Yai attacks, and then her enhanced heavy attack followed by the second cast of her liberation, consuming as many Snowforge blades as needed to defeat the enemy. Afterwards, she'll outro skill to another teammate and trigger a 20% Glacial damage amp for all resonators in the team, aside from Hiyuki when they deal damage to targets with Glacial Chafe on them. When it comes to her inherent skills, Hiyuki's first is Loaded. Whenever a resonator on the team, including herself, applies Glacial Chafe or Havoc Bane, Hiyuki gains a stack of Snow Rust, which has a cap of 3. Each teammate can only trigger 1 stack. The first stack amplifies Glacial Bite damage by 30% and also increases Hiyuki's crit damage by 40%. The second causes Hiyuki to deal an instance of 102% Glacial Bite damage every time she applies Glacial Chafe, and the third amplifies Glacial Chafe damage further by an additional 30%. As of Hiyuki's release, she's only able to generate 2 stacks of Snow Rust by running Chisa in the team. Her second inherent skill simply grants Hiyuki 1 point of Snowforge Blade when she's out of combat for 4 seconds, granting her 2 possible stacks for her first rotation. Hiyuki is an incredible main DPS that brings new life to Glacio with her unique status effect, but does rely on some specialized teammates to reach her damage ceiling. However, since a majority of her damage is Resonance Liberation, she can still make do with some of the older, more accessible team compositions featuring supports like Mornye or Shorekeeper. However, if you're looking to maximize the efficiency of her kit and her signature weapon, picking up a support like Chisa will be a massive add to your Hiyuki's performance. Her performance will only grow with time as new Glacio sub DPSs specializing in Glacio Chafe application are added to the game, so stay tuned. When it comes to building Hiyuki, starting off with her skill priority, you want to max out her Liberation first as it's the main source of her damage, followed by her basic attack and then her forte. Her Resonance skill and intro skill can be both kept at lower levels as they contribute very little to her overall damage, so you can save on weekly boss mats. When it comes to her weapons, there are only 2 real options, and you'll see why. Here's what the calculations are looking like using Emerald of Genesis, the standard 5-star as a baseline. Credits to Pride One. Let's explain these results, starting off with her signature, Frostburn. This weapon provides a standard base attack and crit rate of 587 and 24.3% alongside a 12% attack buff with its weapon effect granting 28% Glacio damage amp, 10% Resonance Liberation defense ignore, and 20% amp to Glacio Chafe damage, assuming the user can actually apply it, which Hiyuki does plenty of across her kit. This weapon is tailor-made for her and greatly synergizes with teammates like Chisa that can further increase Glacio Chafe damage. Her only other real option is, well, you guessed it, Emerald of Genesis, which provides the same base stats as her signature while also providing an ER bonus instead of attack and a stacking attack buff when resonance skills are used. Hiyuki can activate this weapon effect very easily across her rotation, with the ER stat being very helpful for her build. This is her clear second best option. With EOG being extremely accessible on the standard weapon banner and the UL45 weapon box, there's no real need to discuss any other options, so just go with EOG if you aren't pulling her signature. Nothing else is worth it. Now it's time to talk about Hiyuki's echoes, and it's clear she has a best in slot with Wishes of Quiet Snowfall. The 5-piece effect provides 20% Glacio damage and a whopping 25% crit rate when Liberation damage is dealt that gets extended whenever Liberation damage is further dealt, giving Hiyuki permanent uptime on its set effect with ease. When it comes to Echo main stats, you want a crit 4 costs, 2 Glacio damage 3 costs, and 2 attack 1 costs. For substats, you'll prioritize crit rate, damage, ER out to 125%, attack percentage, and liberation damage. If you opt for a lengthier rotation, you can make do with around 120% ER for her build. Hiyuki also doesn't really benefit from any other damage rolls. The last area of investment when it comes to Hiyuki involves your wallet or a lot of saved astrite, her sequence nodes. Big thanks to Pride One for calculating the damage increase per node. Her S1 increases the damage multipliers of all of her 4 claimed self-normal attacks by 120% and also causes the third hit of her attack chain to pull in enemies. She also gains interruption resistance for hits 4 and 5. And after casting her first liberation, her first and second basics will also apply 1 stack of Glacio Chafe on hit. Her second node increases the damage multiplier of her Yai attacks by 120% and also increases the Snowforge blade stacks when she's out of combat from 1 to 3. When she's also out of combat for over 4 seconds, she'll also restore 3 points of Frostheart and Yai, reset the cooldown of Frostblight Jade Cleave, and also restore 50 additional points of Frostheart on her next 2 casts of Frostblight, shortening her rotation. Her third node, which is huge, grants Hiyuki an additional stack of Snow Rust and increases the damage multiplier of her enhanced heavy attacks by 160%. Her 2-stack Snow Rust effect also has the Glacio damage bite multiplier increased by 488%. Her S4 causes all of her resident skill casts to increase the damage dealt by everyone on the team by 20% and also causes her to restore 18% of her max HP when using her 4 claimed self's resident skills. For her 5th node, the damage multipliers on her resident skills are increased by 80%, and for her 6th one, the big one, she increases the crit damage on both of her liberation casts by 500%. She also gains additional Snow Rust bonuses. At 2 stacks, she'll apply her additional Glacial Bite hit whenever any Resonator in the team applies Glacial Chafe, and she'll also gain 40% more crit damage. At 3 stacks, she'll also increase the Glacial Bite damage taken by enemies by 25%. When analyzing these sequence nodes, it's clear that her biggest damage increases arrive at S3 and S6, so make these your stopping points if you're wailing, I guess. Now that we've covered Hiyuki's build, let's get into some of her teams in optimal rotations. Given her massive amount of negative status application and the increased damage of her Glacial Bites the more stacks an enemy has, Chisa will be your optimal partner alongside Lynae in Rupture mode as her current best liberation damage buffer. But she still has plenty of other options in the support and sub DPS slot if those units aren't on your account or used elsewhere. Hiyuki's best overall team on release will feature Chisa as the support and Lynae as her sub DPS, with Chisa on Rejuvenating Glow and Lynae on Pact of Neon Light Leap. You'll start off the team's rotation on Chisa, cast her skill, and then follow up basic attack. You'll then echo skill, liberation, and spam basic attacks until you get Chisa's big scissor chop. Then follow it up with her enhanced skill to transform into chainsaw mode. You'll then spam more basics until Chisa leaps into the air, and during this animation, outro skill to Lynae, who will then skill, liberation, and then charge up her heavy attack while casting her echo skill. Once this hits, jump 3 times, then plunge attack, and then outro to Hiyuki. Hiyuki will then intro in, basic attack 3, then perform her charged heavy attack. Then you'll liberation, cast both of Hiyuki's second form resonance skills, and then basic attack 5 times before dodging and activating Yai stance. You'll perform 3 Yai attacks, enhanced heavy attack, then charge up her second liberation, consuming as many Snowforge blade stacks as you need before ending her rotation and outroing back to Chisa. If you're running into ER issues, feel free to throw in Hiyuki's baseline resonance skill after her bow heavy attack and before her first liberation. This team capitalizes on negative status damage by activating Hiyuki's second Snow Rust stack and Chisa's negative status cap increase, but lacks the third stack as there is no sub DPS Glacial Chafe applier. We'll get them soon though. Another solid Hiyuki team will feature Mornye as the support and Lynae as the sub DPS. You'll open up on Mornye performing 3 basic attacks and then use her enhanced heavy attack to enter hovering mode. Then you'll basic attack 3 times, use her skill during the third hit's animation, and enhanced heavy attack to mark targets. Then you'll liberation, echo skill, and then outro skill to Lynae, who will perform the identical rotation listed out on the first team. From there, you'll outro to Hiyuki, who will then again perform the same rotation listed prior. This team doesn't capitalize as much on negative status damage as it lacks the second Snow Rust stack, but makes up for a decent amount of it with Mornye's 25% outro skill damage amplification and her massive damage increase from her interfered marker. If your Lynae is busy, you can also opt for interesting sub DPS options like Jeja, who amplifies glacial damage by 20%, or Yinlin, who amplifies liberation damage by 25%. If you're running these units, I suggest running a Shorekeeper or a Chisa in the support slot, as Mornye will fall behind in performance without having access to a tune applier for her interference marker's effect to activate. These teams aren't the strongest and will dramatically fall behind Lynae in terms of performance, but they're definitely viable choices if your Lynae is busy elsewhere, like in an Amith or a Luke team. You can also opt for some truly homeless lineups featuring Verena and John Jin, but you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, and while those lineups can sort of work, they're not recommended at all. When it comes to quick swap, Hiyuki unfortunately has very few windows for optimization outside of prepping her first enhanced heavy attack during another character's rotation. With her intro skill providing so much dedication, it's not really worth exploring this mechanic until another Glacial Chafe sub DPS is released, but expect some more follow-up content soon. At the end of the day, Hiyuki is without a doubt one of the most powerful main DPS units released in Wuthering Waves history with her present team options, but still has plenty of room to grow with more tailored releases that build upon her Glacial Chafe potential. It's unfortunate though that you're not able to max out her Snow Rust stacks on release, but her overall flexibility and viability outside of negative status teams is also a fantastic treat for players who might have been scarred by previous releases like Zodi or Cardathea. And her best in slot support, Chisa, has far more use cases than prior tailored units like Phoebe or Chakona. Her performance with free-to-play weapon options is also nothing to scoff at either, and she's likely one of the most satisfying pulls you'll make on your account when you combine gameplay with meta strength. However, it's clear that she isn't a must pull in any capacity, but does that really matter when she more than makes up for it in style? As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.